Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the session. This is section 7 of waste. Glad to have all of you here. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to all of you who are joining us today for this session. So our is to help each and every one of you to bring in massive improvements into all of your environmental modules and reduce the footprint to the very minimum. So let's get started with this section. Okay, please introduce you to our organization, which is Leadership and Sustainability. It is spearheaded by our CEO, who is Ms. Karen Eckberg. She has had a long experience in the sustainability area with different organizations before establishing Leadership and Sustainability about 6 years back. And we are a young company, but with a lot of experience. We have been working on projects which are on materiality assessment, strategy development, chemical management implementations, and in 2019, in the last ITMA, Karen has also been awarded with the Higg Index Verification Leadership Award, which is quite a prestigious award. So you are all at the moment muted, and we can communicate with each other via the question and answer function for any technical questions that you will have. I will just explain to you in one of our later slides. And let me just introduce myself as well before we proceed. I'm a textile technologist with over 20 years of experience in the textile safety and consulting domain, a lead auditor with 14,001 and 45,001. In the markets here, I have also been a climate action plan assessor and a sustainability awards assessor with the CII. With leadership and sustainability, I'm a Higg FEM verifier, a trainer, a BPI consultant. We do a number of courses also on ZDHC trainings for the entire market, and I'm also a BRM verifier. So a bit about the slides that will be sent to all of you. So all of this material is copyrighted with the Sustainable Apparel Coalition and with Leadership and Sustainability. We would definitely encourage you to take the information from these slides and improve your facilities, but please refrain from sharing it outside of your organizations. For all of your internal trainings, etc., you can use these slides. We have more detailed presentations, which we use also for our detailed training sessions, which we conduct with different facilities. So coming to the panel that we will be using, the platform where we will be, engaging with each other for the next 1 hour. We are going to be on the Zoom platform. So you will see a panel here on the bottom. You will see a small panel where you can see question and answers, and this is where you would require to put in all of your questions. Just type the question in here and you can send it. We would request you not to use the chat function because we might not be able to capture all of the questions that come in. And in a follow-up email, you will also receive a recording to this session and link whereby you will be able to download this presentation. This is our agenda for today. We will be touching upon section 7, which is on waste. We will be having time for questions and discussions, and we will also be offering all of you the training and a verification offer from our end, and also talking a bit about leadership and sustainability. Okay, I can again already see some questions which are coming in. Yes, those who have not received the slides, you will be able to receive the slides in a follow-up email. You will definitely be able to receive the slides. Okay. Coming to the section 7, which is on waste. So every year, the manufacturing of apparel, footwear, and textile produces millions of tons of waste that have the potential to basically pollute the environment. And if this is not managed appropriately, all of this waste can contaminate the land, water, and air and the surrounding communities. So it is our responsibility to prioritize this waste and prevent it from contaminating the outside environment. So Higg FEM defines waste as any material or substance that is discarded from a facility site and which can pollute, contaminate the environment and the surrounding communities. So fundamentally, you can categorize your waste into hazardous and non-hazardous waste. So your non-hazardous waste is basically discarded material from the consumption of goods and services and the manufacture of goods. So this could be your cloth, your leather, paper, plastic, your packaging waste. A part of your domestic waste also will fall under non-hazardous waste. And this could include, for example, your food waste, your sanitary waste, whatever waste is generated from your yard, your gardens, from your food packaging. And when we are talking about hazardous waste, this waste can actually cause harm to the public health and the environment because of its chemical, physical, and biological characteristics. So examples of chemical waste, for example, is a hazardous waste. You can have industrial wastewater generated waste, the sludge, for example, which is considered as hazardous waste. You can have also many other types of waste. It could be empty plastic drums. It could be oil contaminated rags, all of which are classified as hazardous waste. And again, the classification of hazardous waste will differ from one country to another, depending on the legislation that is there within that specific location. And a facility should at minimum follow the legal waste requirements. So if legal waste requirements are not available, it is recommended to select a more stringent industry guideline for following the waste characterizations. And for all companies manufacturing or distributing in the European Union, the WEEE, or the Waste from Electrical and Electronic Equipment Directive, is an important directive to follow. And this directive governs the reduction and separation of your electronic waste. So this is also something that we should be aware of. And we saw in the previous sections on energy, water, and waste, we saw the three different levels in which we have questions. We saw that in certain sections we have applicability. Waste is a section which is applicable to all of the facilities, so there are no applicability questions here. We directly go into understanding the different levels, the baselines, and improving beyond regulations. So in your level 1, you have all of your tracking questions. So there are 7 questions in level 1, which talk about non-hazardous waste tracking, hazardous waste tracking, segregations, whether you have what is the hazardous waste storage that you have, what is the non-hazardous waste storage criteria that you have, whether you have open burning and dumping, and also on employee training. So these are your level 1 questions. These are all of your tracking questions which are asked. Next, we have level 2 questions, which are your baselining questions. These are, you want to actually set a baseline to start your improvement journey. And this is why this particular level is important. And this, again, you have a total of 7 questions in your level 2. Again, like in all of the Higg FEM sections, your level 1 has a total of 25 points. Level 2 has a total of 50 points. Level 3 has a total of 25 points. So this is how it is followed also for the waste section. So coming to your level 2 questions, they are on baselinings. They are on the waste disposal method baselines that you will be able to set, the waste quantity reduction targets that you will be able to set, The waste disposal methods, it asks you for the improvement targets, whether you have an improvement plan. You have this in question 12 for your waste. And 13 is on demonstrated waste reductions in quantities. And 14 is your improved disposal method. And level 3, you have 3 questions in level 3. And these are going above and beyond your actual requirements, legal requirements. And this is your final disposal treatment validation, which you would require to make, your waste diversion or zero waste to landfill, and also finally your upcycling or circular economy question, which is there in question 17. So this is how your waste level is categorized altogether. And we go question by question to understand how we should be responding to each of the questions in the waste section. So the very first question that is there is on tracking. So this is on non-hazardous waste tracking. So developing a waste inventory is your first step in understanding the environmental impact of the waste that your facility generates. Your both question 1 and 2 is related to the waste streams that you basically generate from your facility. And before you manage, you need to measure what you have. So the question here is, which non-hazardous waste stream does your site produce? And here you will be asked to select all of the waste streams that you generate. You can have materials, you can have metal, plastic, paper, cans, food, glass, etc., cartons, wastewater, sludge. And again, depending on how you classify your wastewater sludge, you can again classify this as a non-hazardous sludge or as a hazardous sludge. So creating a good waste inventory will basically help your facility to meet with all of the requirements, your legal requirements that are there with regard to your hazardous waste, your non-hazardous waste. It'll help you to better understand where your waste is generated, how are you going to be able to monitor and improve on this particular stream of waste that is being generated. And all of the identification for opportunities for improvement will then happen based on this selection that you are able to make. And based on also the fact that if you develop certain other types of waste, you can categorize all of this as other. But when you are specifying as other, please try and enter as to what all are the categories that you are classifying under the other category. And next you have the same question for hazardous waste tracking. So which hazardous waste stream does your site produce? So you could have empty chemical drums and containers, films. If you're doing printing, for example, on site, all of your printing frames which are discarded will be categorized as, again, as a hazardous waste, and you will have to record that accordingly. Your wastewater treatment sludge, if it is hazardous, it can be classified as a hazardous sludge, both your industrial as well as domestic. You could have expired unused chemicals, you could have compressed gas cylinders, contaminated materials. And again, you have an other category where you will be able to specify any other type of waste which you are categorizing as a hazardous waste in your facility. There is one question, what actually to be considered in e-waste, such as computer scrap, PLC card, and what others to be considered in e-waste? So it could be anything. Let's say you have discarded machines, you have discarded laptops, you have discarded batteries from vehicles that are owned by your organization. All of this, many of this would be then considered as e-waste, depending on the type of local legislation that is there. Okay, let's go on. So hazardous waste tracking, again, batteries, fluorescent light bulbs, ink cartridges, waste oil and grease that is generated from cooking, empty containers, electronic waste, all of this can be classified as hazardous waste depending on your local legislations. Also, coal combustion residues, your fly ash and bottom ash, depending on the type of fly ash and bottom ash that is generated. And also there is another category. So the intent here is to build awareness of all types of hazardous waste types that is produced on site, and to track the volume of each waste type and the method of the disposal of that particular waste type. So you should know the source, you should know what is the waste that is generated, and then you will be in a position to make strategic decisions on how you would be able to reduce that specific waste type. Also, we should have monthly monitoring, which happens. You could be having weighing devices which are there on site. So let us say you are weighing all of this waste and then bundling it up and categorizing it as a particular type. Your weighing machines should be calibrated so that you are aware whether the weight that is being reported is correct or not. So the verifier who is coming on site to understand the module would actually be looking at all of your invoices to understand whether they are categorized correctly, they are reported correctly. So it would be essential to have in place a monthly monitoring kind of a program that measures the quantity of the waste and all of the measuring equipment that is being used. You can have many different types of weighing machines, maybe in 2-3 different locations. All of them should be calibrated and the records should be available at the time when the verification is happening. And also, in order to determine the quantity of waste generated, you can use your bills, your invoices that you are sending to invoices that are being generated by the waste contractor, etc. And subsequent to this, you also have some unscored questions, which are, do you track your non-hazardous waste streams and non-hazardous waste streams? And here you would require to report as a yes or a no. And apart from this, you also have, do you track the source? What is the description of the waste that you are generating? You can take the description from all of the ones that you have reported. What is the quantity that you have generated for a particular year? So here you should include your quantity right from Jan 2022 to December 2022 in your 2022 cadence. What is the unit of measure? It could be kilograms, it could be tons, it could be, if it is a liquid waste quantity that you want to report, it could be in liters. So depending on what is the type of waste, you would have to report on the unit of measure. What is the method that is used to track this waste source? It could be, again, invoices, it could be weighing machines, it could be estimations. So depending on what is the method you are using, you would have to report that accordingly. How is this waste disposed of? So again, you have options of recycle, reused, incinerated. So you have to choose the method by which this particular waste quantity is disposed of. And finally, describe your waste management and disposal process for this particular source is also one field which is there, where you would have to talk about how you are categorizing it and describing your waste management of that particular stream. So again, when we are talking about the reporting the quantities in your question 1 and 2 of the different non-hazardous and hazardous waste streams, these are all data which are generated, and here we have to report on what is the data quality that is there for each of these streams that we are reporting. We have to look at what is the source data, whether you are doing it from invoices, whether you're doing it from the weighing records. You have to show the logs if you're doing it from the weighing records. Compare the data with the current year data with your historical data. If there have been a specific drastic increase, let us say, of a particular value, you should be able to attribute that to a known source. Ensure that the most recent and updated versions of your data tracking spreadsheets are being used. Be mindful of the units that you are reporting. Should you be reporting it in kilograms? Should you be reporting it in tons? Review any kind of assumptions that you are making. Again, in waste, sometimes when you're weighing very large quantities of waste, there may be certain estimations which are being done. Try and ensure that you're capturing all of these estimations into your Excel sheets, so that anybody who's coming into the system is able to understand how these estimations have been made by the previous team. Verify how the specific waste is disposed of, and report the disposal method, whether it is landfilled, whether it is recycled, whether it is incinerated. Ensure that the waste vendors have appropriate licenses and they are able to handle each specific waste type that is being generated. And finally, in the describe your waste management and disposal process for the source, you should ideally try and add whatever are the notes that are there for the specific field. Okay. Next is, what are some of the do nots that we have to be mindful of? This is also very similar to the do nots that are there for the data management that is there in your energy and water section. Do not report the data that is not accurate. Do not report any type of estimated data if it is not supported by verifiable and reasonably accurate estimations. When you're weighing very large quantities of waste, there are, again, like I mentioned, if there are estimations which are being made, try and ensure that those estimations are captured in your Excel sheets, so that anybody new coming into the system is able to review them. And finally, how is this going to be verified? When verifying your waste facilities waste use data, the verifiers are expected to review all aspects of the waste tracking program that is there within your facility. And if there are any kind of inaccuracies which could be generated, they are expected to understand those and correct those in the system. Okay, and let's go on. Finally, you have your question 3, which is on segregating waste streams. So here comes the question on, does your facility segregate all waste streams into non-hazardous and hazardous waste and store them separately? So the first step is to make sure that all of your legal requirements in waste are met. And this should include all the steps involved, namely generation, collection, segregation, storage, transportation, treatment, and disposal. You should also provide sufficient working instruction on what are the standard operation procedures that are there for handling of the waste. Like, for example, if you will collect all of paper waste in a particular area, ensure that it is ideally tracked, and you should have a poster which talks about where your paper waste is actually being collected. If you're collecting all of your metal waste in a particular area, ensure that it is also labeled, and that people are able to understand as to what are the signs and where exactly should this be actually accumulated within your facility. And again, you should also have training and awareness campaigns which talk about how you should segregate the waste. So you could be segregating the waste into red, green, and blue categories depending on the type of waste that you are generating. And each of the personnel who are there in your organization should be aware as to what waste will come under what category if you're doing this. You can also have many types of awareness campaigns. You can have posters which talk about the types of waste which is generated and how you are segregating them. And all of this can also be shown to the verifier when he is coming to the facility to understand how you are doing your segregations. And the suggested upload here would be the photos of all of your segregated storage sites. Next comes question number 4, which is on hazardous waste storage requirements. So this question talks to you about, does your facility have well-marked designated hazardous waste storage areas and containers? And hazardous waste basically poses a higher risk to the environment and human health than your non-hazardous waste. And hence it requires stricter management process. And here it is important to have designated hazardous waste storage area to eliminate any type of risk to workers and to the environment. And there are several requirements that are there on the Higg platform for hazardous waste. Ideally, your upload here should be photographs of the segregated waste storage areas which you would be able to report. And coming to what are the categories or what are the requirements as per the platform, you should have clearly marked and labeled sites with whatever are their with their contents for the hazardous waste storage area. It should be protected from weather. It should be ventilated and dry. Protected again from unauthorized employees. Many sites have access cards with the help of which you will be able to enter a particular area. And ideally, if you are able to have a hazardous waste storage area with the names of the personnel who are authorized to enter, that is a good practice. Or you can also have the cards with the help of which you will enter into the hazardous waste storage area. You should have explosion-proof lighting, no water drains that the liquid could spill into. You should have no eating, no smoking, and no drinking signs which are pasted on the area where you're storing your hazardous waste. Flammable substances should be kept away from heat. Incompatible waste should be segregated. And you should also have spill response equipment and PPE that is located nearby. And all of this should be ideally accessible for the workers who are working in this area. For your hazardous waste storage requirements, you should have storage containers which are in good condition, appropriate for their contents, closed and clearly labeled. All of the containers should have lids. Containers should be secured to prevent falling. This is also something that we see is not followed in many cases. Securing a container will help to ensure that there is no spill of the container especially when there is a pushing and shoving that is happening in that specific area. You should also have adequate aisle spaces that are maintained between the containers. So all of this are requirements for your hazardous waste storage areas. And similarly, for your non-hazardous waste storage area as well, you have requirements which come in, and the question here is, does your facility have well-marked designated non-hazardous waste storage area and containers? Here you would require to show the photographs of your segregated storage sites for storing your non-hazardous waste. And again, what are the requirements as per the platform? You should have clearly marked areas with the containers which are labeled with their contents. It should be again protected from weather, ventilated and dry. Again, if you have flammable substances like paper or if you're storing waste, gasoline, for example, all of this should be kept away from heat, from direct heat. Use proper PPE when you are in this area. We cannot stress more here on the usage of PPE. People who are handling waste should ideally have gloves and masks which are required to be used when they are segregating this waste. We often see that people who are in the waste storage area do not have the appropriate PPE. They should have a closed feet. That is, you should have either shoes which you are using, whereby you are ensuring that you are not stepping onto anything which is hazardous. You should have storage containers again which are in good condition, clearly marked with their contents, closed, and also all of them should be secured to prevent falling and safely stacked. This again is something that we don't see, that there is a securing of the waste storage containers. Most of the waste storage containers are large containers, and if they are not secured, if there is a push and a shove, they can fall over and all of the contents can spill. And that is why it is important that we are securing these containers when we are following good practices within our organization. Next is question number 6 on open burning and dumping. The question is, does your facility forbid all irresponsible waste disposal actions, including open burning, open dumping, burying, and storage tank leaks? So these are the 4 clauses which are included, and ideally you should have this included also into your environmental management system. So the suggested upload here is your policy for forbidding burning and dumping, burying, and storage tank leaks on site. So the policy can be on how your waste is going to be handled and disposed of. Your contract with your waste handling contractor can also be an evidence for showing that you prevent or you do not allow for any type of open burning or dumping on site. And there is a question here: what if the empty chemical container are brought to other country like Vietnam for recycling? How could it be declared in the final disposal of the waste? So here you would require to mention this, so you have a field on how this waste is currently disposed of. So that is a field where you will be able to write any notes of how this waste is disposed of. So this is where you will be able to mention what is done to the actual waste. I hope that answers your question. So this is your contract for waste handling contractor. This is also an example, or this is also an evidence that you can show for question number 6 in your waste. And next you have question number 7, which is on employee training. And the question here is, does your site provide training to all employees whose work involves hazardous waste handling, such as maintenance and custodial staff? So here you would require to have proper handling, storage and disposal techniques and procedures that are in place, specific operational procedures for waste minimization, and the use of PPE for handling of that specific waste. For example, if it is a hazardous sludge, how should you handle the hazardous sludge should be a procedure which you have in place. If you're having non-hazardous waste sorting, which is happening in a particular area, you should have a procedure of how this non-hazardous waste is going to be sorted within those premises. If you have, for example, electronic waste, you should have a procedure which talks about where your electronic waste is actually going to be stored and how it is going to be disposed of. So these are some of the trainings that your employees will need to have in order to understand how or what is the policy or procedure that you will have in place for the disposal of these different categories. You also have some secondary questions on how many employees were trained and how frequently do you train your employees for this question number 7. And here you would require to have the list of trained individuals, whoever have been trained on these procedures. What is the training material, or like, let's, for example, say that you have a training calendar which you develop for every year. You can upload this as, again, an evidence. And any type of certifications, let's say the personnel are going to an external agency where information on how on best practices, for example, is being provided, they can show also these certifications as examples of how you would be able to optimize the usage in this particular area. So that was your question number 7. And with that, we have finished all of the questions in level 1. So here we saw in level 1 that we are tracking all of the waste categories, which are, or rather the waste streams that the facility is generating. Level 2 is where we are setting the waste volume baselines, the disposal baselines, etc. So let's go to level 2. The first question in level 2 is, has your facility set a baseline for solid waste? And here you have to select all sources of waste for which your facility has set a baseline. What is the source of waste? Is the baseline absolute or normalized? And what is the baseline quantity? This is also very similar to how you are setting your baselines in your energy and water sections. So like I said, the flow of the questions is very similar to in all these three different categories, because each of these categories are your continuous improvement categories. So the intent of the question here is to give you a starting point from where you're going to be defining your baseline and then starting your improvement process. So here you will have to select all sources of waste for which you have set a baseline. What is the baseline, whether it is absolute, whether it is normalized, what is the quantity of the baseline, what is the unit of measure. Again, do you have a variable with the help of which you want to normalize it? Enter the baseline year. How is your baseline calculated? Here you should give the formula ideally of how your baseline is calculated. And also you have a question on, was the baseline verified? So for this question, you should actually answer a yes to this question only if your baseline was verified the previous cadence by authorized representative. There is one question, is baseline required for all types of waste? Ideally, yes, because once you set a baseline, it indicates that you have set an improvement step for your organization for that specific waste source. So ideally, you should try and set the baseline for all of the different categories that you start off with. But let us say you have started off with only the main categories in your module. You will then say that you have started with the baseline for only these specific categories. So you can say a yes or a no against each of the categories. And this is automatically again picked up from your question number 1 and 2, from where it is asking you whether you have a specific waste source. Okay, let's take an example of how you're calculating your baseline. Here you have your production volume as 1 million pieces of textiles, and the textile waste which is generated is 50,000 kilograms, which you are reporting on the platform. So your normalized baseline will be 50,000 divided by 1 million, which is 0.05 kilogram of textile waste per piece of the quantity that is actually generated on site. So this is how you will be reporting your normalized baseline. So this is also quite similar to how we have discussed the energy and water sections. Question 9 is on the waste disposal method baseline. So here we saw question 8 is on the actual waste quantity baseline, but question 9 is on the disposal method baseline. So you can, depending on the disposal method, whether it is recycle, whether it is reuse, or whether it is incineration, etc., you can have your disposal method baselines which are included. Here you would require to have your disposal method. First of all, you have to understand all of the disposal methods that are possible. Quote that. Again, what is the baseline quantity? You will have to also enter the baseline year and also how your baseline was calculated and whether your baseline was verified in this particular question. And here again, we have one more example of how the baseline can be calculated. So in 2021, the total waste generated was 1 million kilograms. The total waste that was disposed in the incineration plant was 50,000 kilograms. So your incineration baseline has to be reported then as a percentage. So 50,000 divided by 1 million and into 100, this is the quantity that you will actually report on the platform then. So coming to your next question, which is question 10, which is, does your facility set formal targets to reduce waste quantity? So we saw in your energy and water sections how important it is to set reduction quantities. So similarly, like also in those different sections, in waste, we have to set reduction quantity targets. And here the questions are, or the ancillary questions to this main question is, what is the target change for the waste generated from this source? What is the target year? And describe the measures planned to achieve this target. So this should be reported. Depending on a yes, no, or an unknown, you can answer to this particular question. You need to set targets that cover at least 80% of your total waste quantities. And if you set targets for 50 to 79%, then you will only receive partial points. Whereas if you cover more than 80%, then you will receive full points for this particular question. There is a question, is normalized quantity is the same as baseline quantity? So you have in baseline quantity, when you are reporting, you have two possibilities. You can give the normalized quantity, or you can give the absolute quantity. Here you will have to mention again whether it is a normalized quantity that you're reporting or whether it is an absolute quantity that you're reporting. Okay, let's move on. So your formal targets should include a baseline performance value, a targeted reduction. So again, if you're saying that you want to reduce a quantity of waste that is generated, then you have to report it as minus the percentage that you are reducing. And if you are trying to increase it, let us say you want to report that you want to increase the recycle percentage, then you can report it as a plus percentage. So this is something that we need to remember. And an expected start and a completion date should be given. It should be relevant to the site's most significant sources of the waste. It should cover at least 80% of the total waste generated for a full score. And again, some of the do's that we have to be mindful of when we are talking about waste reduction quantity targets. Here you have to review the target to ensure that all aspects are covered. Enter the targeted reduction or improvement as a percentage. Don't enter it as a whole value, but as a percentage, and make sure to enter a negative percentage for a reduction target. Select the appropriate type in the FEM, whether it is absolute, whether it is normalized. Provide a sufficient detail on how the target will be met in the describe the measures planned to achieve this target field. So you have this field where you have to talk about how you will be doing it. Let us say you want to improve the recycling. You want to say that you are going to, you have identified a new waste contractor who will be helping you with recycling of a particular waste stream. Can be one of the things that can be mentioned in this describe the measures planned to achieve this target field. Some of the do nots that we have to be mindful of when we are looking at target setting. Do not report a target again that is not accurate. That is, the data source is not known. Do not report a target that's based on insufficient data, and do not report an estimated target if it is not supported by verifiable and accurate estimation methodology and data. So here to the verifier, you would actually have to show how you are going to be achieving this target, and they will be reconfirming whether this is a valid or a correct entry if it is an estimated target. Also, on the waste quantity reduction targets, on how this will be verified. When we are verifying, generally, we will look at all of the supporting evidences that you are using, maybe your strategy documents, maybe your Excel sheets where you are actually setting your targets. What are some of the facility operations in relation to the waste sources to ensure that the targets and the opportunities evaluated are relevant to the site's waste that is generated is something that will be looked into. And if there are any corrections to be made based on any errors that are noted, they will all be corrected on the platform during the verification. Okay. Next is question number 11, which is on the waste disposal method improvement target. And here it is, did you set a target for improving the waste disposal method for your facility's overall waste? And so here you will have to talk about the waste disposal method, whether it is incineration, recycling, reuse, etc. What is the target change for this method of disposal? What is the target year? And describe the measures planned to achieve this target. And here again, you need to set separate targets for the total amount of waste generated and the disposal method. These targets are focused on basically the disposal method. So for each method, you have to include the target change, whether if it is, for example, -5, then you will have to say that there is a reduction that you're looking at. And if it is a +5, then it means that there is an improvement that you are looking at. So a positive value indicates an improvement, a negative value indicates that there is going to be a reduction. So this illustration basically shows you the hierarchy of waste management, and the best you can do is to prevent waste from being generated from the beginning, and then to reduce, reuse, recycle. You can send the waste for biological treatment, incineration with energy recovery, incineration without energy recovery, and then the very last option would be landfill. So this is something that we mentioned. Try and separate the targets for the total amount of waste generated and the disposal method, and look at the values that you are mentioning on the reporting platform as well. So here's one example of a target to improve the waste disposal method. Let's say you are sending a lot of waste to the landfill, and now you decide to send textile, plastic, and leather waste to a vendor that processes the waste in an incinerator plant with energy recovery. Your expected reduction of the waste sent to landfill will be 10%, because the textile, plastic, and leather scrap represents 10% of the total waste sent to landfill. So in this case, you can do this basically at no cost, because the waste treatment costs are equal. And finally, you decide that your timeline to start doing this is May of 2023. So this is an example of how you would be able to record the formal target and maintain in your system. And this would be essential to show also as evidence to the verifier. So formal targets for improving the waste disposal method, you have to increase the quantity. Examples of improvement to disposal methods can include increase the quantity of waste sent to external recycling contractors, your biological treatment vendors, to divert the waste from landfill or incineration without energy recovery. Or you could have another example where you're switching to a disposal or a treatment method that recovers useful aspects from the waste. So this could be your energy recovery, it could be, certain other recovery that is possible from the waste, etc. So all of that can be reported in this. And when you are evaluating improvements to waste disposal or treatment methods, again, the following hierarchy can be used. First is waste source reduction or reuse or upcycle. Next is recycle. Next is energy or material recovery and any other treatment. And finally, you have landfill. So this is the hierarchy that we can follow. There is a question here. Can you share some examples of best waste management practices followed by companies? Yes, we will be coming to that in the following questions. In level 3, we will be talking about some of them. All right. Coming to formal targets for improving the waste disposal methods, the Higg FEM requires that formal targets are set in order to be able to say a yes to this question. And while establishing formal improvement targets, we have to be sure to base the target on a formal evaluation of the improvement opportunity and the actions, and then calculate the amount and types of waste that can be treated by the preferred solution. Suppose you want to say that you are going to be able to recycle most of whatever the waste that is being generated. Maybe it is an ash that you are generating, and you are able to say, okay, this ash is going to be a good fertilizer to a particular land where you are where you are able to take it to the land site and then use it as a fertilizer. So in that case, you are then able to say that you are recycling or you are reusing that specific waste stream altogether. Define again the exact target quantity and express it as a percentage. We have defined how we have to do that. Define the start date of the target, end date of the target, defined the intended completion date for the required improvement, and establish procedures to review the target. So again, ideally, we would recommend a quarterly review of all of your targets in all of the sections, whether it be energy, water, and waste. It is a quarterly review which would be required. And also we have to ensure that the target is relevant to improving the facilities major waste disposal method. Suppose your major disposal method is recycling and you want to improve the percentage of the recycling that is happening, then that is what you would require to note and improve. Next, we come to the waste implementation plan. So the implementation plan is very similar to that of again, water and energy. You would require to have the implementation plan template, and you can use the same template as was used in the earlier examples. The question here is, does your facility have an implementation plan to reduce the waste quantity or improve the type of treatment? Waste reduction plan should show specific actions designed to achieve the targeted reduction in the waste consumption. And we have next our question 13 on the demonstrated reduction in the waste quantity. Here the question is, has your facility reduced your waste quantity or improved the type of treatment in this reporting year compared with the established baseline year? And here you will have to have a full list of whatever are the sources which have been improved. What is the percentage improvement that has been achieved in the last calendar year? And here again, we would like to mention that just like in energy and water section, it is on the basis of the last calendar year that you will have to report the improvement and not on the basis of the baseline year that you have selected. So this is something that we have to be mindful of. You should have a description of what is the plan and what are the strategies that you will use to achieve these improvements. And some of the do's and don'ts that we have to be mindful of when we are talking about the waste reduction quantity, the demonstrated waste reduction quantity improvements. You have to review the improvement data to ensure that all aspects noted are covered. And like, for example, if there are 2-3 different types from where you are recycling, you have to ensure that all of them have been covered in the data that you are reporting. Enter the improvement quantity either as an absolute or as a normalized value. This is again a year-on-year change that will be required. Select appropriate units in the field where you have to report the units. Input the correct percentage change or in the waste quantity from the previous year, and make sure again to enter a negative percentage for a reduction and a positive percentage for a improvement. And provide also sufficient details in the described strategies used to achieve this improvement field. Next is your question 14, which is, has your facility improved the waste disposal method for the overall waste in the reporting year compared with the baseline? And here you have to select the baseline year. What was the percentage change? Describe the strategies used to achieve this improvement. And here, improvements in your waste disposal methods can be demonstrated by diverting waste to a preferred disposal treatment method that results in less impacts to the environment. For example, sending waste to be treated through incineration with energy recovery instead of sending it to landfill would be an example of how you are sending it to a better disposal method. And all reporting guidances as given in in your previous question is also applicable here. Next, we go on to our level 3 questions. All of your level 2 questions basically talk about your baselining, your target setting, your improvements, etc. And level 3 is where we are going above and beyond all of these requirements. So these are certain high level questions again, which are there on the platform. So here, your question 15 is, does your facility validate the final disposal and treatment of all hazardous waste? And this you can do by means of auditing your waste contractor. You can keep track of the waste, and at least every 3 years, you should have a audit which is scheduled of your waste contractor to ensure that he is maintaining the practices as desired by your organization. And here, what are some of the aspects that we need to look at when we are talking about the waste contractor? You should look at the waste contractor qualifications, such as his business license, environmental permit, etc. You should look at the due diligence and legal environment performance that he is maintaining, any type of historic violations that he might have had. What is the overall environmental performance of that waste contractor? What is the cost viability of using the contractor's services? You should also conduct regular assessments after the contract is placed, and ensure that practices to transport the waste are implemented in a way that's traceable. Ideally, have that as a part of your environmental management system. It should be secure. The waste must remain segregated and properly labeled at all times. Even at the waste contractor's site, you should be able to ensure that it is labeled and segregated. Monitor that the contractor's facility has impermeable surfaces so that any liquids that are going there are not contaminating the land. There is proper security, there is proper fire, flood protection, etc., which is maintained. There is no illegal dumping and burning that is being done. Ensure health and safety practices, such as providing employee access to your PPE, to your training services, to machine safety. Let us say they are operating machines with the help of which they are segregating certain wastes. All of the machine safety parameters are being followed at the waste contractor is something that you would require to keep track of. And also check if optimized waste disposal methods, such as recycling of the hazardous waste or incinerating the hazardous waste with energy recovery, etc., is done to reduce the impacts to the environment. So in many cases, when we look at how the waste contractor is using, you could also suggest to him certain techniques which will help you to improve and show the improvement also on your Higg platform. So you can mention this in the how the waste stream is actually finally disposed of. In that field, you will be able to mention some of the best practices that the waste contractor is also following. Next, we have question 16, which is the waste diversion or zero waste to landfill question. Here the question is, has your facility or factory diverted at least 90% of all discarded materials from landfills, incinerators, and the environment? And here you can choose a yes, no, or unknown for this particular answer. And you would be able to say yes, or you would be able to qualify for this point only if you are diverting at least 90% of all of the waste from landfill or incineration without energy recovery through optimized alternatives such as reduction, reuse, recycling, etc. Sorry. And coming to the next part of it, which is this is basically a hierarchy which is followed for zero waste hierarchy of the highest and best use. These are some of the factors that we need to consider. So it is recognized that a mature industrial economy can reach literal zero waste, and there are different threshold guiding questions which are there to zero waste. So this question basically aspires that the facility is able to attain some of the leading practices in waste reduction by diverting 90% of all discarded materials from your landfills, incinerators without energy recovery and the environment. And you are defining a condition by Zero Waste International Alliance. So this is the ZWIA Alliance, and a link has been provided here. You can actually find out more information on these. So these are the 7 R's. These are some of the guiding questions which are there. The very first being rethink or redesign. What has led us to this present linear use of materials? How do we redesign these systems? What are reduce, that is what supports the use of less material, less toxic material. Reuse, that is what supports better use of these products, that in ways which we are able to retain the value or usefulness and the function of that particular product. Recycle or compost, how do we ensure materials are put back into the materials cycle? Material recovery, what was salvaged from the mixed waste. Residuals management, that is what is still left and why is it still left and how can we manage this residual material, and what do we need to do to take this out of the system and such that it can be circulated finally in the loop that we are looking at. And how do we manage what is left in a flexible manner that continues to encourage movement towards zero waste. And the last one is the unacceptable or regulation. What systems and policies encourage wasting and should not occur is something as a question that we should be asking ourselves. So these are all, again, leading questions which help us towards the zero waste hierarchy that we are talking about. Sure, I can see some request for recordings. You will receive that. Can we go back to page 39? You will be able to watch this recording again. So if there are any questions, you can definitely put it to me over a mail and I will be happy to answer them. All right, let me look at any other questions which are unanswered. Okay, I think we have answered all of the questions here. And we go to the very last question, that is in level 3, which is on upcycling and circular economy. So here the question is, does your facility upcycle some of its waste or insert its waste into a circular economy system? So your facility can engage its material suppliers, buyers, and waste management contractors to find creative solutions. So what are some of the creative solutions that we can talk about? Let's say you are receiving a lot of wooden crates. You can perhaps have a system or have a section where you're creating, useful material from all of these wooden crates. Maybe the metal is being recycled, maybe the fabric, whatever waste is there within your facility, you are able to create durries, or you're able to create, patchwork material with the help of which you are able to employ a lot of local people and create something much better than whatever is the waste that you would actually be disposing of. These are all examples of how you would be able to create more value from some of the waste that is already existing in your system. And in many cases, we see that, there are closed loops which are being formed, whereby you have industrial clusters which are coming up. So the waste of one organization is being used as a raw material for a different organization. This is again an industrial kind of a perspective, where we are looking at how you can, use your waste as raw material for another process and create a better value added material. And here there are 4 aspects of closed loop supply chains. First of all, you have to use recycled or reused material that is responsibly sourced, make efficiently, that is designed and product such that you are able to minimize the use of materials in that product, and used for a long term. That is, design the product such that it is going to be durable and they have long lives. And finally, contribute, that is, replenish the market supply with an amount of recycled, reclaimed, or renewable material at least equal to the amount used to make the product. Suppose you're using wood from forests, try and see that you're able to replenish it. If you're using cotton, then try and see that you are able to replenish whatever is being taken from the source, and you are able to contribute. So that's how you would be able to ensure that you have a circular economy. Okay, there is one question again, how to calculate waste disposal method. So you have to look at all of the disposal methods that you have on site. You could have recycle, you could have reuse, you could have incinerate, you could have landfill, etc. You will have to then take the entire quantity of a particular disposal method and divide it by the total quantity of waste that is generated, and then express this as a percentage. So that is how you would require to report the waste disposal method. I hope that answers your question. And open to any other questions that you might have on the waste section. I think we have answered all of the questions here. My email ID is so and so. Can I ask your email ID? Yes, of course, you will get my email ID for any type of communication. And should you require any clarification as you are going ahead with your self-assessment, I will be very happy to help you with that. For sure. Thank you so much. Thank you. So with that, I would like to come to our last section where we would like to share with you our team who is in place. You can see all of our verifiers and trainers who are there in the markets, and we are a very dedicated team who is trying to help you to improve on whatever are your environmental management practices on site. Please, you can contact any one of our colleagues for information or for understanding how you would want to respond to a particular question, or should you have any clarifications on what you should be answering to a particular question, etc. If you hover on the name, you can actually see the email ID as well. We encourage you to kindly, correspond with each of our team members here, and you can watch the recordings of our previous sections as well. Our last section will be coming up very shortly this Thursday, and that will be on chemicals management. Please register for that section here. And this would be a section which will go on for 1.5 hours. We might not be able to complete it in the normal 1 hour. Just a small update to all of you on that. And if there are any other questions, I will be happy to answer them over mail since we are short of time. And this is our training and verification offer. And this is our team in place who is in the markets. And we would encourage you to correspond with each of us for your further requirements. Thank you so much for being a part of this session. And I look forward to seeing you in our next webinar, which is coming up this following Thursday. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.